National Convention of the Democratic Party will now come to order.
Mr. Chairman and members of this convention, it is a genuine pleasure and a high privilege for me to present this gavel to you and to this convention. This gavel was made from a hickory which grew at the Little White House, Warm Springs, the Georgia home of our great president, the late Franklin D. Roosevelt.
A lot of news is being made not down here on the convention floor, but downtown Chicago in the hotels where delegations are caucusing and where the battle for ballots in the balloting coming later this week is taking place. One of those reports is ready for us now as our newsmen sift them out. Richard C. Hoddlett is in the Hilton Hotel lobby with Representative John Morse of California. Come in, Dick.
The first real news break, Walter, has been that the platform drafting subcommittee has finished the first two planks of its platform. Representative John Morse of California is one of the leading members. Mr. Morse, will you tell us what you have just concluded?
We've concluded the platform on atomic energy and the platform on domestic policy. The atomic energy platform is a six-point restatement of a conviction that we must have a return to bipartisan administration of the atomic energy program. Take it out of the field of partisan politics, turn it to the use and the benefit of the American people, step up the reactor development program so that the United States again can be the preeminent power in the field of atomic energy.
You mean government support for a reactor program?
Government support for a reactor program.
Now, on the domestic side, Congressman, what have you written?
We've written a clear definition of issues on the domestic problems of this government, a recognition that the present administration has been lacking both in imagination and courage in meeting the needs of an expanded American economy. To maintain old living standards is not in itself sufficient.
Now, as I read your platform, I see mention of inordinate profits to the few lenders of money, that Republican prosperity is an illusion, that an evil is slowly infiltrating the entire economic system. It looks very much, Congressman Morse, as though the Democratic Party and its platform were planning an old give 'em hell campaign. Is that right?
We give hell where hell is deserved.
Down on the floor of the convention hall, Blair Clark is with the Wisconsin delegation. Blair, come in.
Yeah. I'm standing with Mr. Clifford Louie, Vice Chairman of the Wisconsin delegation. What's the latest on the Wisconsin delegation's position? What was the result of that caucus, Mr. Louie?
The Wisconsin delegation has taken a position that they will wait to see whether or not Mr. Stevenson or Mr. Harriman will give some recognition to Senator Kefauver.
What is their expectation of the form that recognition will take, Mr. Louie?
Well, they would like very much to have either choose Senator Kefauver for Vice President.
Well, now, if that doesn't happen, Mr. Louie, what is the disposition inside the Wisconsin delegation now? About how are they divided between Stevenson and Harriman?
Well, if that recognition doesn't come for Senator Kefauver, I would imagine that the majority of the delegation will then go on the first ballot for Mr. Harriman.
Was this a result of the statement by Mr. Truman, or is this Harriman feeling existed for a long time?
I think as the second choice, with the majority of the delegates, it has been Mr. Harriman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Louie, and now back to Walter Cronkite.
Just had a We're just checking reports on the UAW-CIO president, Walter Reuther's endorsement of Governor Stevenson for the presidential nomination, which came out during the night. We have a report now from Elmo Roper, our special consultant here at CBS News, in connection with that endorsement, that Governor Williams of Michigan, who has not yet made up his mind, but who has all of Michigan's delegates pledged to him, a rather sizable block in this convention, Roper says that Williams probably will go for Stevenson eventually in view of Reuther's endorsement. Doug Edwards is down on the floor of the convention. Let's see if we can pick him up now. Doug?
All right. Down on the floor, we have Colonel Jacob Harvey, well known all over this country as a master politician, among other things. How is your campaign going for Governor Stevenson?
Well, it's going about as it was. We had a little annoyance, a little setback.
Get out here.
But I haven't changed my estimate of the situation one bit.
What is that?
Well, that Stevenson will be nominated.
On what ballot?
Well, that I don't know. There was a possibility up to the Truman pronouncement that he might be nominated on the first ballot. I don't think that's very much of a probability anymore, but I don't think that it will change the ultimate outcome.
How many first ballot votes would you estimate the governor to have now?
In excess of 500, depending upon whether... You see, what the Truman Declaration did is firm up favorite son candidacies, where they would ordinarily be ready to change to one or another candidate the first ballot. I think they now will wait a while and see what happens, because it increases their bargaining power and the strength of their position.
The effect of it will be to make a larger number of votes, of course. Well, tell me this, what did you personally think about the Truman Declaration?
Well, I didn't like it.
Blair Clark is on the floor with the Oregon delegation. Come in, Blair.
I'm standing here with Monroe Sweetland, National Committeeman from Oregon. Mr. Sweetland, what about that credentials fight on Mississippi? What's happened this morning?
Well, this morning, all morning, the Credentials Committee has been meeting in a tense session with a packed room, hearing the arguments for and against the seating of the Mississippi delegation. The battle down there is not a typical civil rights battle. It's really a loyalty to the Democratic Party fight involved by the purported efforts...
What's the problem? Have you got any Republicans on that delegation?
That's the point. There are several members of the Eisenhower Committee in Mississippi seeking seats in this convention.
Are they supporting Eisenhower right now, Mr. Sweetland?
Some of them were on the letterheads of the Eisenhower Committee in Mississippi just before the opening of this convention.
Is there any chance of unseating Senator Eastland, who's become a symbol to the north of the Democratic Southern?
If this convention would unseat Senator Eastland of Mississippi, it would mean 1 or 2 million votes to the Democratic Party in the November election.
We have assembled on this historic occasion in the 164th year of our party's glorious existence for the purpose of engaging in deliberations, setting forth the issues, and making certain nominations not confined merely to the interest and welfare of the Democratic Party, but dedicated to the greater glory of God, the welfare of all our citizens, the leadership of the free world, and the progress of all mankind. From these halls in Chicago shall go forth sometime this week the candidates of competence and conscience who shall become the next president and the next vice president of the United States of America. Yes, we are met here tonight to plan for the happy hour when representatives of the party of the people shall be restored to direction of the national government, and when the opposition party of privilege and pillage passes over the Potomac in the greatest water crossing since the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea. How different, however, will be the fate of the parties to this mass exodus. Where the children of Israel had only Moses to lead them on, the evacuation of January 57 will be an astronomer's dream of scooting stars. For this trek will have generals to the left of them, generals to the right of them, generals in front of them as these old soldiers fold their political tents and just fade away. No responsible Democrat has ever uttered one word that reflected upon the personal character or integrity of the incumbent President of the United States. No God-fearing Democrat wishes for our President, and as long as he's there, he's our President. No God-fearing Democrat wishes for him anything less than the best of health and the greatest of happiness. But in this national campaign year that decides the course not only of 4 more years of American faith and history, but the whole course of the whole world, the people are entitled to know what his plans are for running the country should he proceed to set up a White House board of directors and pass around high powers to a small and inside group. They are entitled to have him accept all of the responsibilities of the office that belong upon him, including that most unbearable load of all, the responsibility for Nixon's irresponsibility. By its own conduct and on its own record, the Republican Party stands indicted by the people of America and must undergo trial on the basis of its record in office. And with your permission, you, the representatives of the democracy of America, knowing that every school child in America, every person in America knows what a courthouse looks like. We've all got one back home. With your permission tonight, I propose that we return an indictment against the Republican Party in the name of the people, 167 million people of America, who shall constitute the vast audience, and the voters will form the jury. The defendant Republican Party of America, specifically the administration of Dwight David Eisenhower and Richard Milhouse Nixon, aided and abetted as accessories before and after the fact by the first millionaire cabinet in history. In this great symbolic courtroom and before the greatest bar of justice ever assembled, in the greatest courtroom God ever placed on this earth, we now present a 10-count indictment against the defendant Republican Party and its leadership. On the basis of the evidence presented and the proof offered, you will render your verdict in November. Let the counts of the indictment in the name of the people of the United States now be read. Count number 1 in this 10-part indictment charges that the defendant is guilty of aggravated assault and battery upon the political bodies of the unforgotten farm folk of America. Count number 2 charges that the Republican Party has willfully and wantonly held the laboring man of America in such sustained contempt and has regarded him with such antagonism that the vast gains of labor over many tempestuous years are now gravely endangered, while the barons of big business in the national administration look upon the laboring man as a sort of secondary citizen possessing no privileges and no rights. Count number 3 charges that the present national administration has denied the small business its rightful share of expanding opportunities in America in favor of the monopolistic mergers of big business domination of the economic scene. Count number 4 charges that the Republican Party is guilty of corruption in high places involving an unprecedented spree of giveaways, grab, and greed. Count number 5 charges that a veil of secrecy has been thrown around activities and affairs of the administration now in Washington to such an extent that the legitimate inquiries of a free press, a free people, and a free communication system are denied without just cause or provocation. Count number 6 deals with the most tragic giveaway and spillway of them all. The action of General Eisenhower in announcing delegation of the powers of his office into the hands of associates in violation of the spirit of the Constitution of the United States of America. Count number 7 charges that the natural resources and public facilities of this great nation have been made the subject of bargain counter giveaways and adroit maneuvering to the long-range detriment of the happiness, safety, and welfare of our people. They're fooling around with resources that only God can give, but which man can give away and exploit. Count number 8 charges that during the past 3.5 years under Republican administration, the take-home pay and the keep-home income of the average American family have decreased in the face of rising costs to the extent that making ends meet is now a major problem for millions of Americans, and that Republican promises of tax reduction were deliberately altered to favor the corporate interest. And count number 9 charges that the Republicans have willfully permitted our foreign policy to be streaked with indecision and blurs, brink of war disclosures, a loss of American prestige among the nations of the world, reversals of decisions, and a general drifting and lack of vision that must be attributed in considerable measure to the President's personal appointee, the Secretary of State himself, John Foster Dulles, unquestionably the greatest unguided missile in the history of American diplomacy. Count number 10 is the general charge and the summation on which your verdict is sought to oust the defendants, whose activities have been designed to give away God-given resources of America, to forget the farmer while catering to the corporate interest, to liquidate the gains of labor, to sacrifice the small businessman while subsidizing his larger corporate competitor, to delegate the duties of the presidency, to lighten the tax load of the few while the living cost of the many continue to mount, to prevent power from being the property of the people, to follow a fantastic, frantic, and fatal foreign policy, to callously, circuitously, and contemptuously counteract and nullify acts and intent of Congress, and otherwise to breach the faith, the trust, and the confidence of the American people. We call upon the people of America for their own good, for your good, for our good, wedded as you are to the cause of social progress, dedicated to the cause of democracy, consecrated to the cause of honesty, decency, and morality in government, to rise up as one and smite down these money changers who have invaded and violated the people's temple of justice on Capitol Hill. We call upon the vast jury of American voters to consider your verdict, and when you make your report in November, I know you will say, we, the jury, find the defendants guilty as charged and fix their punishment at banishment from the national political scene, exile from the seat of our government, and consignment to political oblivion for the next 4 years. That should be the verdict. And tonight, as we borrow from the past, let us build for the future in this great political year, 1956, when we fight to restore the people to power in Washington. Do your duty. Work for what you believe. Stand up and fight. Get out and work so that you'll not leave government in irresponsible hands. The fact a man's made $1 million, that he's personable, doesn't justify leaving a man in power who describes an incident that may claim your boy's life as a small thing. The fact they might have good intentions at times doesn't justify the economy of the nation being destroyed. The fact that a man's got a military record behind him doesn't justify him holding office at the expense of the people. But there's one thing you can justify. You can justify begging God for guidance. You can justify studying the record, and after you've done it, going out and fighting and singing in unison, you and I together, of every race, creed, and color. Let us go forward singing in unison the inevitable victory hymn, Precious Lord, take our hand, lead us on. Thank you very much.
Tonight, I come at the invitation of the national chairman of the Democratic Party to speak to you as a fellow Democrat. I cannot talk to you about my choice as your standard bearer, but I do want to talk to you about our party and our duty. You here have a heavier responsibility even than I have, because you are delegates. You are going back into your communities all over the country, and you will tell your friends, your neighbors, what you believe a democratic victory should mean. I do not believe that victory in itself is enough. I want victory, and I believe we will have it in November. But I want even more, that each and every one of you, as you go back into your communities, take the message of what you want that victory to mean. We must be a united party. It is true we have differences, but everywhere in our country we know that today our differences must somehow be resolved, because we stand before the world on trial, really, to show what democracy means. And that is a heavy responsibility, because the world today is deciding between democracy and communism. And one means freedom, and one means slavery. There are new problems. They must be met in new ways. We have heard a great deal and we were fired with enthusiasm by the traditions of our party. But the new problems we face cannot be met by traditions only. They must be met by imagination. They must be met by understanding and the feel of the people. And not only the people at home, but the people of the world. And it is a foolish thing to say that you pledge yourself to live up to the traditions of the New Deal and the Fair Deal. Of course you are proud of those traditions. Of course you are proud to have the advice of the elders in our party. But our party is young and vigorous. Our party may be the oldest Democratic party, but our party must live as a young party, and it must have young leadership. It must have young people, and they must be allowed to lead. They must not lean on their tradition. They must be proud of it. They must take into account the advice of the elders, but they must have the courage to look ahead, to face new problems with new solutions. And in so doing, we will not only meet our own difficulties at home and find ways to solve them, but we will also meet some of the difficulties that in that great speech that you heard from Governor Clemens, our keynoter, were pointed out as being the issues between ourselves as the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. We have great issues. I believe that it is absolutely imperative that the Democrats come back to power, but they must come back with the right leader. They must come back with your considered and careful choice. And you must feel a very great individual responsibility when you choose your leader, when you have chosen your leaders, then to back them, then to go in and work. It isn't just fight, it's work, and some of it is dull work. But you must be ready to go in and work, because that is the way that parties win victories at election time.
Mrs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, at 71 years of age, making, as she said, her third appearance before a Democratic National Convention, and leaving the stands as she came to it with the strains of Sidewalks of New York in the background, a tune which first had national significance for her in 1932 when she and Franklin Delano Roosevelt were serenaded at the State House in Albany on the night of his nomination for a convention such as this for his first term as president.